With degrees in criminal justice and ethics, over 30 years of investigative experience, a recognized expert in investigation procedures, and an expert in criminal and social behaviors, I am Rick Decker, and this is A Shadow of Truth. Greetings from sunny Charleston, South Carolina. I am Rick Decker, and you are listening to A Shadow of Truth. On the hunt for a serial killer. Today, we are talking about the meanest man in America, Donald Henry Gaskins, otherwise known as Pee Wee Gaskins. This is an unusual twist for me for this file. Before we get too deep in this, I want you to know that over my years here in South Carolina, I have met a lot of people and worked with a lot of people, and a lot of them are interesting characters, and I have the honor and privilege of working with them. But I personally know a couple of people that are directly related to Mr. Gaskins. So, knowing that I have a relationship with people that are actually connected to this man, it was important for me to take a different spin, if you will, on this particular case. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper later on. Before we get too deep into the show, I don't want to forget to ask you to like and share the show with your friends and families. The links are available in different locations depending on the platform that you're listening to the show on. I also want to give a shout out to everybody that's listening. I mean, my God, we've had the show on the air for just over 30 days, and we have 2,400 downloads in 35 different countries. I have no words other than extreme expression of love and gratitude for each and every one of you that are listening. Um, I'm amazed. I didn't think the show would take off that well. Canada, United States, Mexico, France, Germany, Spain, Australia. The list goes on, and I just can't thank you all enough. I want to give a shout out particularly to San Bernardino County Fire Department. I know some people out there that are listening to the show, and I had the opportunity to go out there and meet some of the firefighters when I went out there to see my daughter who lives in San Bernardino County. And so I just wanted to tell you guys I'm thinking about you and I remember you. So, okay, Mr. Gaskins, who was he? And how did he evolve into South Carolina's most notorious serial killer? Mr. Gaskins was classified as a serial killer rapist, but his method of killing wasn't consistent to one way. He was known to shoot, stab, drown, even poison people, and it has also been known that he every once in a while ran somebody down with a car. Mr. Gaskins was born to Miss Parrott in Florence, South Carolina area. He was the last of a long string of illegitimate children. It had been reported that he suffered abuse multiple times at the hands of multiple stepdaddies and other people that were come and going inside his mother's life. Not only was he abused by adults, he was abused and picked on by his peers. He was of small stature as a child, and that earned him the name of Pee Wee. The sad thing here is that to add insult to injury, Mr. Gaskins, his mother took very little interest into him, into his development, didn't nurture him. So the man, for crying out loud, didn't even know his real name, his given Christian name. He did not know because everybody called him Pee Wee. And when he heard his name for the very first time, he was 13 years old, And it was when his name was called from a court docket, and somebody in the courtroom had to say, Pee Wee, they're calling you. That is almost unfathomable in today's society. I mean, could you imagine not even knowing your given name until some stranger somewhere called it and you just sat there because you'd never heard your name before? You didn't know for sure what it was because everybody called you by your nickname. And his nickname was derogatory to say the least. I mean, like I've said before on the show, that as a society, we're willing and casual about assigning labels to people for things that we don't understand. Sometimes it's based off of the behavior. We identify people as criminals because of their behavior, and we are a society that we condemn people for shortcomings that they have no control over, and that we don't understand why they are the way they are. Now, most of the time, these labels are full of condemnation and derogatory means. And over time, after we keep hearing these condemnations, I mean, people start acting out because it's what's expected of them by the societal masses. Now, I'm not saying that we've got to feel sorry for Donald, but I am saying that, like I do in almost every show, no matter what a person does, they are still part of the human race. And someone somewhere loves that individual. Yet, Mr. Gaskins didn't even have that in his life. His mother was, in my opinion, the most loveless parent I've ever heard of in my entire life. And since Donald was abused by multiple men in his life, he had no direction, no supervision, nobody to look up to except other peers who acted similar to how he acted. In real terms, his life was just a mess. He was left to the streets at a young age. 13, he was convicted of multiple crimes, burglary, assault. He even, with two other boys, gang banged a young girl. I mean, this went on for some length of time. And when he was incarcerated into the South Carolina Reform School for Boys, he was beaten and raped by other inmates and maliciously abused repeatedly. You kind of have to ask, well, what the hell did you expect if there's no intervention and no safe haven for somebody like Mr. Gaskins? There's an old saying in life that you can only beat a dog so long before the dog starts ripping you apart. Same thing with human beings. Humans can only take so much and only do so much before they literally will snap. I talked to you before about cases that I've worked on when I was a paramedic and as a criminal defense investigator. I cannot count how many times I have seen women that have said, I beat him to death because I got tired of having the hell kicked out of me. This is no different for Mr. Gaskins. The life Donald experienced isn't really a life any one of us would want. He had a string of troubles, although you can tell that he wanted a normal life because he did escape from reform school. While he was out, he married a girl, only to find out that this girl was already married. So he returned to reform school on his own accord to finish his sentence. He was released at 18 years of age. At that point in time, he took a job. Now, you've got to remember, retaliation and violence was all he ever knew. So he gets on this tobacco plantation, but he found trouble because one girl on the farm lied about what he did or what he said. And he took that as an insult and beat her with an axe handle. Well, subsequently, he earned another visit into the prison system of South Carolina. Now, like I said, I've known people uh, that say and have proven that they're related to this man. And some say he was a crazy MF. And then others say that when they were kids and he was around, he was kind and gentle to them. Now, you have to keep in mind that's all subjective because at one point, Donald even took one of his nieces and her girlfriend and tried to rape them and subsequently beat them to death. So when you start interviewing people on a topic like this, you have to take everything with a grain of salt and know everything is subjective because which goes back to telling you that no matter how bad something or someone is, deep down inside, there is a part of them, I think, that wants to be what we call normal, but they just don't fit in at that point in time. Now, I'm sure we've all had experiences where we didn't fit in and violence wasn't, the outcome. I mean, I have to be extremely honest with you. The first time I ever felt like I fit in anywhere was my first residency for my doctorate because for the first time in my life, I was around a lot of people that thought like me, that acted and had similar social issues, not being able to get along and not being looked at in favorable manner. Because truth be told, if you get with me and you see me in public, I start talking, and after about 3 seconds, you're like, man, this guy is the most arrogant SOB I've ever met in my life. But that's what happens to us. See, we don't always fit into the in group. And so when we don't fit into the in group, we automatically become the out group. And this is what happened to Mr. Gaskins. He did not fit in to normal social standards. Was it his fault or was it circumstances? That's a big question that we have to ask, particularly in the world of criminal justice and profiling. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. Through his history, we can see that Donald had opportunity to try and correct his behavior and be productive. And he didn't do it. And I would surmise that the reason why he didn't is because since his early childhood, it was full of condemnation, ridicule, being bullied because of his size. I would venture to say that they probably, being up in South Carolina where he was and some of the big farming community that most people really didn't see him as an intelligent human being because he was a child of the streets, if you will, at that time. Now, I already had told you he'd been married once, but he also got married another time. In fact, he fathered a child. His daughter was named Shirley, and she passed away in 2014. That's another indication that Pee Wee wanted, or maybe even craved, to have the dream that the rest of us have: get married, have a family, raise offspring, live a good life. Because, truth be told, most serial killers, we don't ever see that in their life, but we see it in Pee Wee's. We see that he tried to maintain work, we see that he tried to maintain relationships, but because he didn't have a good foundation, His mother didn't pay attention to him. She brought men in from left and right. He was the last of a string of illegitimate children. So we already know that there was a society looking down on him because his mom wasn't married and he was illegitimate. So this poor guy probably felt like he had nowhere else to go except down. When we start looking at acts that he did, I've got to tell you, Pee Wee, he does not fit the mold of even the most common serial killer. Um, Usually, serial killers stick to one gender type victim. Not Pee Wee. He killed men and he killed women. That makes him, in fact, one of the rarest serial typology killers I've ever seen. Since he killed both men and women, he even cannibalized some of his victims. Now, I don't know how they know this, but I think there are of some survivors, some victims that um, were even alive when he started to eat them. He tortured people. What he would do is he would cut off a limb of an individual that he had captured and start eating their flesh in front of them. And there were reports that on a couple of occasions, he made the victim eat their own flesh. And there were also reports where Pee Wee would take two people and have victim A kill victim B and eat victim B in front of victim A and ask victim A or force victim A to participate in eating victim B. And then he would start hacking them up, victim A, and eating them piece by piece and making them eat themselves piece by piece. So you can it's imagine the horror that these people were going through. And this is what, got him named the meanest man in America. Now, I'm not saying Pee Wee wasn't a dangerous man because he was. I mean, there was one instance, and I don't know how the hell he pulled this off. While he was incarcerated, a cellmate made him mad, and he got a hold of C4. And all of you veterans like me know that C4 is a plastic explosive, and he blew him up in his jail cell while being incarcerated next to him. Pee Wee was convicted for 14 confirmed murders. However, while on death row and in his memoirs, he took credit for 110 people. Donald was put to death on September 6th, 1991, but he didn't go peacefully. He slashed his wrists in hopes that they would not put him into the electric chair. He wanted to kill himself and not let the state do it. And guards caught it, saved him, and then subsequently put him on suicide watch and eventually put him in the electric chair where they executed him. Pee Wee was organized. He had a uniqueness about him that um, actually, it it breaks the mold. And when we look at talking about serial killers, he labeled his kills. So this leads me to understand that he was not only focused on the victim types, but also the geographical areas. Pee Wee was what I call a geographical offender. Now, a geographical killer is an individual that selects, like the title indicates, a certain geographical location. Now, we don't identify killers normally as geographical killers because it's really more of a profiling typology that we use. But I have seen this and been around so long that I can basically do what the hell I want, just to be honest. And I have on many occasion used a geographical location as a way to assign to a killer. I had helped somebody up in the higher part of the United States. I'm not going to say where they had a guy that was killing people and placing them in dumpsters. And through understanding geographical profiling and being able to understand and had worked on Pee Wee's case through my undergraduate years, that I was able to help them identify this individual faster than what they normally would have been able to do. Now, with Pee Wee, geographical profiling would have been able to probably narrow the playing field down, but at that time, back in the 70s, geographical profiling wasn't even used here in the United States. And it was just starting to being used up in Canada, but it didn't come down here until around the 80s, early 90s. So, like I said, Pee Wee categorized his kills. He said that those he killed on the highways were called his coastal kills because those highways encompassed from North Carolina all the way down into Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, and all of those were either on the coast of the Atlantic or the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. The next category that he had were the bothersome kills. Those were men and women that he killed because they simply bothered him. He was on the hunt for people to kill every 6 weeks. He went out looking, and wherever he found them, either on a highway or in some other environment, is how they were classified. These bothersome kills were just people that he met along the way that irritated the hell out of him, and he decided, you need to die. Now, he also had another category called the serious kills. Now, as far as I can understand, he only killed two people through this serious kill category. And the reason why he killed these people is that it turned out they knew what Pee Wee was doing. I don't know how they discovered it, but they discovered it. So instead of turning him in to the authorities like any logical, sane person would do, they decided they were going to capitalize on their knowledge. And they attempted to blackmail him. It did not end well for them. They were killed pretty swiftly and buried and never to be seen again. Now, the other thing that makes Pee Wee very unique, and we've talked about this before on the typologies of serial killers, is that killers of this stature tend to use particular weapons, either based on their skill set or based on opportunity, but it's still usually the same type weapon. Not Pee Wee. He was known to, like I said, run people over with cars, use axe handles, knives, guns, strangle, and even hang people. And like I said before, he used C4 in jail once, and that's still a mystery how he got a hold of that while in jail. And when we talk about these killers in the past, we've also spoken about that their motives were pretty usually fixated on one or two motives, but not with Pee Wee. With Pee Wee, his motives were based on everything from opportunity, the right time, the right place, to people that try to take advantage of him, to release anger, and even satisfy sexual desires. Gaskin was one of the most complex killer of his day. He was non-discriminatory. He killed despite gender, color, or religion. I mean, most serial killers have a type that they go after. Not Pee Wee. He went after everybody. Hell, for one girl, she was pregnant. He drowned her. The most unique thing was that Pee Wee was even known to kill for money. He was a not only serial killer, rapist, he was a contract killer. Somebody had hired him to kill a well-known farmer in the Florence area, which he did, and then he buried them on their own land. Now, you have to understand Pee Wee was pretty quirky, okay, but he was also brazen and bold. He had bought a hearse, and he flat out told people when they say, "Why do you have a hearse?" He would tell them. And in fact, the bumper sticker on there said that he needed to carry of the bodies of the people that he killed to his private cemetery. I mean, he was pretty brazen. People were not in the shadows about what he was doing. The 70s was a different time, ladies and gentlemen. People tried to keep to themselves, tried to keep out of everybody's business, and this was is what allowed him to be dangerous and stealthy. So, like I said at the beginning of the show, this case is quite unique in the fact that Pee Wee was unique. I know people that are family to Pee Wee, and they're good people. And instead of just offering the profile, because Pee Wee's profile is very challenging for anybody, I'm going to ask you the question that I stated at the beginning of the show. In criminal justice, in our industry, there are scholars that ask and say and argue that serial killers are born. Then the other side says serial killers are made. So, what do you think? So, this is what I'm going to do. If you go to the description box or to the website and look for the link that says Pee Wee Gaskins, you will see my thoughts and rationale for if serial killers are born or made. And you will also get the profile of Mr. Gaskins as I would have done it and as I did do it for one of my classes in my undergrad work. If you'd like to also email me and tell me what your thoughts are at a shadow of truth podcast at gmail.com, I will engage you and talk to you about if serial killers are made or if they are born. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please, as always, let's take care of one another. Carpe diem.